Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. And today we are going to world build using a comic book character. And today we're going to use Daredevil. So grab a snack, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Well, thank you very much for stopping by and joining the show. We're going to talk about Daredevil and the Marvel comic book character and use aspects or thematic elements of this character for world building. Now, kind of washed out. I have a bunch of standees, like those giant cardboard movie poster things, and they've always been standing in the background of the little man cave entertainment area here. And oops, Daredevil's on either side of me. Can't bring him as close as have my little Spider-Man standee, who's kind of crouching down and a little washed out. But you guys get the point. So let's all get on the same page first, talking about Daredevil, and then we'll get into some of the thematic elements. And the reason for this, much like the world building on this show, that we've done for, I don't know, going on almost 10 years now, is sometimes taking the smallest, most minor things, especially when we have writer's block or some kind of creative backstop in our brain and we just can't knock it loose, or we feel like we're not very creative. Then we can use these things to like enhance our creativity. And one of the great things is, let's not call it stealing. Let's call it an homage to some creations that are already out there that people love. Yeah, you'll see it. And taking some of those elements, and then you rub off the barcodes, right? You get the serial numbers off of it, and you change it, and then that way you can go like, oh, you can tell your friends and family and gamers and whatnot. You're like, yeah, I created this on my own. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. All right, so let's get on the same page when it comes to Daredevil. All right, so Daredevil is another one of these Marvel characters that resides in his own lane. Much like Spider-Man that we talked before, Daredevil is very similar in the essence of like why this character isn't on a team. We'll get into why the character never really seems to be on a team, does seem to team up with other people, tends to be localized rather than a very broad character. Hangs out in a place called Hell's Kitchen. We'll get into that in a little bit. And some of the other elements. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Homage and inspiration. Yeah, that's what that's called. So, but also we may find ourselves falling into very thematic notions of storytelling that seem to repeat themselves over and over again. And we'll also talk about something known as the heroine's labyrinth. So you'll get to know that. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, a little bit right there. Yeah, there's sometimes the names were created at a period of time where we're just like, wait, what? Although I personally, I feel like Daredevil falls a little bit more into more of the adult-ish, especially when we talk about the religious iconography of Daredevil. Yeah, Batman's name that Daredevil should have a little bit like that. Yeah. All right, so let's do some generalization with Daredevil, and this happens with most Marvel and DC characters and comic book characters in general, that there are similar themes, but the reset button gets hit on them many times. So sometimes their origins get changed. Some of their NPCs and their backgrounds are elevated or reduced, erased, or new ones brought in. But over time, depending on your age and your fandom period of time, you may assign yourself with one version of the character, but then they hit the reset button and do it again. So Daredevil is a character that mostly resides in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. Now, Hell's Kitchen is the equivalent of a portion of a city like a Gotham City. It is crime-ridden, mostly the highest levels of the people there are like lower middle class and lower, and seems to oh yeah, we'll get into it. We'll get into religious iconography. And in its most superheroes in their beginning origins, especially back in 50s, 60s, 70s, were very four color. And in other words, they didn't have any angst or edge to them. They were just simply there using the basic four colors of the ink process. Very colorful, lots of smiles and things like that. And over time, somewhat. We'll get into it. But as young people got older and became our age, they went back into those comic books and those characters and started lifting up elements and realizing that many of these characters are deeper than we gave them credit for. So Matt Murdock has a mom and dad. You don't know about the mom initially, but his dad is a boxer, and his dad also, to earn money on the side, well, and half earn money on the side, half threatened by the local mobsters, wants him to be a bully to collect money from local businesses and also throw fights in the ring, despite the fact that I can't remember the nickname for his dad, Fighting Murdoch or whatever, was and he was a good boxer, but a little bit not the smartest, but he wanted his kid to be smart. So he was a boxer, but he wanted his child to study and become a lawyer and get the hell out of this neighborhood. Well, unfortunately, we have our dead person in character's background moment where his father was supposed to throw a fight and didn't, and then he's end up murder killed by the organized crime. And in the movie version of Daredevil, we actually see like Kingpin drop a rose on top of him. Now, there's been it's long since passed. The movie was okay, that they changed the race of Kingpin, crime boss, big guy, crime boss, whatever. But his racial heritage had nothing to do with the character. So I don't know. No, not recruit, but I have trained in martial arts for quite some time. I trained in Okinawan karate, so despite the fact that I've got the barrel right here, it was designed for short, wide people, so it actually worked a little bit. Although I am sitting and slouching a little bit, so maybe the barrel is more like a soft pillow. So here, let's get into some of the dichotomies of this character that I like, and it deals a lot with the religious iconography. So his dad is a boxer, living and dying by violence, but he was a very peaceful person and wanted his child to grow up to be peaceful, despite the fact that, well, he actually learned quite a lot of boxing, and Daredevil it's been pointed out that Daredevil is actually quite a good boxer despite having learned many other martial arts techniques. In addition to that, his mother hadn't been mentioned long time in the comic book history, which was finally revealed by Frank Miller. Frank Miller really turned this up, that his mom left and became a nun. And throughout the character's history, they've incorporated this angel devil motif into the character. For example, Daredevil is Matt Murdock, the Daredevil, is Catholic, And there are many types of images. Let me see if I can find one. I didn't even think about doing this. Devil, uh, devil on church. And let's see if we can get some images here. There's one up. There we go. I think I found one. Yeah. There we go. There's a lot of times in the comic books where they've had Daredevil, who of course he's wearing a red costume with devil's horns, and he is similar-ish to Batman. That is a person to be feared, and in that in those, it's a little difficult for some of you to see this. Uh, there we go. You'll see that he ends up having a lot of fights in churches, wrapped around crosses. He finds refuge and healing in the basement of these institutions, and so the devil angel motif tends to show up quite a bit. And as you can see, even with some of the artwork, like you'll get the stained glass behind him, or the sun rises and shines through, or he's beaten and battered and he's hanging on them. But it goes even deeper than that. At a certain period of time where Daredevil, like Spider-Man, tends to get beaten pretty badly in some of his major storylines. And so his mom, as a nun, has I'll say resuscitated him back to health by having him heal up inside the church. And then, of course, because of his Catholic heritage, they make a big point about him being having a lot of guilt. He also tends to, in his normal civilian life, meet many different NPCs, characters, and other people in his broader background in churches to have discussions about their lives, and not in his Daredevil costume and that sort of thing. So we get a lot of these things. Oh, I see you. Yeah, Michael Clark Duncan played, who I think passed away. I couldn't remember his name. And, but yeah, unfortunately passed away. It was also the main character in the Green Mile movie, and many other things, but the Green Mile movie, using his large size and whatnot to great effect as an actor. But Daredevil also, there we go. Daredevil, unlike Batman, isn't a rich character. He's a character that comes from the very streets, and in a very noir type of storytelling, many times Daredevil / Matt Murdock meets people who are the angelic guardians in a dark, abysmal, street level type of Hell's Kitchen. So he meets people that are, feed the homeless in soup shelters. He meets the blind homeless guy that tends to have all of the knowledge about the goings on in the city. He's this person that finds the good, the little scraps of hope in an area that's dark. Now, something that I did not address here, and this goes with the dichotomies of Daredevil, right? This Daredevil who's violent, dressing like a devil, meting out very violent justice, is someone who cherishes peace and tranquility. And this goes even to an accident that he had. Now, of course, we have superhero accidents who some strange accident gives them superpowers. And then over time, different creators have retconned some of those accidents as, like Spider-Man. Some people have, creators have said Spider-Man didn't gain his powers through an accident so much, but that being bitten by a radioactive spider was something that activated something that was in him. Whatever. Same thing here goes with Daredevil. So supposedly a truck taking radioactive material drives through Hell's Kitchen, probably because of some illegal a dumping scheme or something like that, gets into an accident, and to save people out of the way as the truck, crashes and whatnot, he does so, and then Daredevil goes towards the radioactive sludge or something, and he gets blinded by it. But as a result, all of his other senses are heightened to superhuman levels. And so Daredevil is known to be someone who, while he can't see, he sees everything, if that makes sense, right? So it's like, well, he can't see, but then a lot of the because his other senses are so high, including hearing, that in the movie version of it is like a radar sense. They often call it a radar sense, where his ears do hear like a bat, like Drew mentioned before. Like maybe their names should have been changed, because Daredevil technically has bat-like balance and hearing. And in the movie version, he actually uses his cane, his billy club / cane, to knock against solid objects to create that those vibrations and those sounds that bounce off of things to make three-dimensional images in his head. Of course, he has the other super senses: his hearing, his sense of smell, his sense of vibration, and the movie did a really good version of like how he likes the rain, because the rain coats everything, so he can get kind of like a three-dimensional image of different people, including Elektra, who was his girlfriend for at least a short time in the movie version and in the comic book version, and he gets to see people's faces and whatnot. So Daredevil is another character that is in his own lane and is the epitome of a Marvel street level superhero. So what are we going to do? Oh, we got to talk about the Rogues Gallery and some of his capabilities. So because of his senses, and the senses are so acute, he is known as Daredevil, the man without fear. And part of that is that because he doesn't have sight, he's not afraid of the things that he can't see, if that makes sense. So sometimes we are surprised by images and things around us, but because essentially he doesn't use his sight, he's not scared to be in the dark. As a matter of fact, one of his best techniques is to take his billy club and bounce them off of things, and takes out all of the lights around an area, and then starts fighting in the dark, beating people, kicking ass and whatnot, and taking names. And so running along rooftops and ledges and doing the gothic the gothic crouch on the corner of a building ledge is a very common imagery for him, just like the Batman version with Batman's cloak being a bit like 3.5 times too long, blown in the wind with the rain behind him, or thunder or something. Same thing for Daredevil as well, right? And doing the parkour across rooftops and sliding on electrical lines and what are those things? Laundry cables and whatnot strung across alleyways is a very common Daredevil thing. And Daredevil also has a very street level rogues gallery as well. Spider-Man's rogues gallery tends to be animalistic and primal and elemental. Daredevil's rogues gallery tends to be very street level, taking much of the criminal element and just adding a little twist to it, maybe a mask or a name or something. But a lot of his criminals' superpowers are like, I have a shotgun, or I'm just very muscular, or I wear body armor that I designed by cutting up, Kevlar or something of that nature. Not too many superpowered villains that he has, and if they do have a superpower, it's like a one and done, or it is something very temporary and on the lowest levels. And every once in a while, Daredevil does fight up against like a second tier or even third tier villain, temporarily, usually a one shot, and then Daredevil goes right back to his standard in Hell's Kitchen. So long explanation, but what What is about Daredevil that we can use for world building where we're not literally just copying and pasting this character? Well, one of the things is, again, like Spider-Man, Hell's Kitchen is a character unto itself. It is an urban location filled with a lot of characters, filled with character, meaning like it has a physical description of this place, like a Gotham City, that we can really enhance for a world building setting, and giving that place unique features and whatnot is cool. For example, Hell's Kitchen and Daredevil, he's known to, well, run across rooftops, which means that the rooftops have to be tall and close enough to make sense for an individual to be able to run across them in the first place. So he's not living in a suburban area with 1 and 2 story homes with large lawns or anything like that. No, this is very, 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 very urban, very, very street. Yeah, Drew says, for me, the villains of Daredevil are mostly boring. Yeah, I agree with that. I kind of agree. I enjoy usually other heroes as foils more, especially Punisher is great in that regard. It's funny because other heroes tend to be greater foils for Daredevil than other villains, right? I'm with you on that one. And I think Daredevil's villains, if I could retcon a little bit, maybe because some of the greatest creators don't get to work on Daredevil or have worked on Daredevil in the past. It's less about the villain and more about the thematic elements involved in the story. For example, one long-term girlfriend for Daredevil her name was Susan. She's actually portrayed in the televised version of Daredevil. Oh, is it Susan? Damn it! Now I'm gonna have to look up the wiki. And Karen, it's not that. It's woof. There we go. Karen. I was like, wait a minute, which one is it? Not Susan. It's Karen. Funny how some of the names of the characters end up becoming the in modern parlance has changed a lot of the characters. But anyway, there we go. Elektra, supporting characters. Sorry, I'm on Wikipedia here. Allies, come on, where's she at? Karen Page, there it is. Romantic interest, Karen Page. And in the story, unlike the televised version of it, because it's a little bit dark, in the comic book version of Karen Page, she turned to drug use. She became an adult without. Desperate moves require desperate measures require desperate moves. So she becomes an adult actress and has a deep drug addiction, and yet Daredevil still is trying to pull out the angelic part of her. That's funny. Yeah. Speaking of being a foil for another hero, that is exactly what I work on the moment in my own system. I think is not done enough in our hobby. Really? Yeah, I agree. Like foils characters. Like there's a lot of NPCs that we kind of one and done, but as recurring characters as foils, and especially if those recurring characters are foils for some other thematic reason, that usually tends to be a thing. Oh, let me change my background here. It's supposed to be dark and rainy. Forgot about that. So anyway, the another part of Daredevil in terms of like finding the hope and the peace and the purity in a dark place is that how much forgiveness is there in a world where when I say a world, I mean like his neighborhood, Hell's Kitchen. When it comes to morality and ethics in Daredevil, that you know, how much forgiveness is there for people who do dark and criminalized and dangerous and deviant actions and whatnot, and that comes up a lot. So many of his villains are, I'll say, temporary. Yeah. Right. Even got the red sweatshirt on. Trying. It's like, um, how much punishment can Daredevil put out on some of his bad guys until you realize, like, you know, maybe they don't need as much ass kicking. Maybe they kind of need like a hug or something like that, and that ends up happening. And also, like Punisher and Spider-Man and some of these other heroes, many times Daredevil is put in opposition to them in terms of which person has the best, it is trying to get the best outcome using their tactics. Like, for example, Spider-Man against Daredevil, both of them having great senses and speed and agility and things like that. Daredevil is very much a very brutalistic vigilante in comparison to Spider-Man, whereas when you compare Daredevil to Punisher, Punisher is a murderous killer compared to Daredevil, who just wants to like beat ass, right? And it's the same. These are all the same characters. Daredevil kind of rides the middle between being more brutal than Spider-Man, but being less brutal than a Punisher type of character. Now, in terms of creating a setting where Daredevil is our main character, one of the ideas is that, especially with the religious components to it, I could imagine even in a fantasy realm where the player characters have some tangential relationship with religion in this world, whether you believe in it or not, right? And even having, not like in fantasy, it wouldn't be you wouldn't be agnostic. It would be more or less like characters who are they don't trust in divinity, much like the Greek gods are very like ephemeral and they're like chaotic, and you really can't trust their motivations and things. I could imagine something like that being in a city state, or maybe even a modern day or even science fiction setting, where there are people who are devoted to a religious thing, but then the heroes are like, listen, I understand and I don't disagree. I don't want you to not do what you're doing, but you're not being very effective because you kind of need a big fist to get things done and maybe need to beat some ass. And those individuals are not into that. But it also is a great motivator for players that own a thing and take and preside over protection of a place or a thing, especially protecting innocence as well. For those who are those NPCs that are pacifist and don't have the skills or ability to fight against, larger enemies, whether they're intimidating or the enemy has a lot of like financial or political or just public influence, that the players may step in because bullies want to bully, and bullies are always going to bully, and punching bullies in the throat is a really good thing, a really fun thing to do, and setting the players up to protect the innocent in a place where crime has taken over sounds like a kind of a good thing, especially if the players aren't necessarily adventuring like a hero's journey. If they are more internal, like Heroine's Labyrinth, that they are the ones that are trying to keep the natural order, protecting the innocent that are still living here. That'd be kind of cool. I actually like this. I like the idea of that. Yeah, Daredevil does a lot of like the classic Catholic Christian imagery, but having other religions, or either using another one or having a place that incorporates a lot of religious iconography, like through behavior and language and action and artistic pieces and things like that, cultural influences, food and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think it would be really cool, especially if, for example, maybe there's a location where there's tends to be a pilgrimage of sorts where people come to a place, but it's very difficult for them to leave. When I say difficult to leave, I don't mean by force necessarily, but maybe economically or emotionally, trauma wise, that people come to a place and have difficulty leaving that place because of their connections, or they have nowhere else to go. And this Hell's Kitchen region, though of course it doesn't need to be named Hell's Kitchen, maybe that kind of place, and the players maybe reside over it as bodyguards and vigilantes and things. So even if they don't believe in atonement or something, or maybe the players have martyred themselves in many ways, knowing that they won't be, their actions are not welcome in the faction that represents what hope and trust and grace would be, but they're martyring themselves. Kind of like the classic Western, where the Western gunman is like, I'm fighting for a better world, knowing that they themselves would not fit into that world because of their bestiality in many ways. And I don't mean that literally. I mean about they've committed so many sins that they just get kicked out of heaven due to personal guilt and trauma and whatnot. And Daredevil's kind of that character who's done a lot of dark things and forgiven even, or let things happen to people that are pretty unforgivable, yet he still clings to this hope that maybe, just maybe, he could be forgiven for the things that he's done. And that cycle has happened over and over again with the Daredevil character. Also, something really cool about the Daredevil character is, like a lot of iconic street level superhero role-playing games and whatnot, it's like, is it really a superpower? Yes. Usually these street level characters have like one thing. And usually that superpower is not much more effective than, say, a character with no superpowers and some gadgets, right? Like Daredevil has super senses, and it's cool, but it's not like he can blast things out of his eyes or fly through the air or shape change or walk through walls or lift up a car or something. Normally his super senses allow him to are normally associated with investigation abilities, and of course never being surprised, or very rarely being surprised, let's put it that way. And often as a lawyer, he can, by day he prosecutes crimes, but then he ends up finding out evidence that cannot be used in court, and then of course he's a person of the night out there to beat ass and take names for in the name of justice, so that people in the neighborhood can get back their justice. And of course, it's the typical trope where he's a street level lawyer who gets paid in, I don't know, tube socks and chickens and things like that. Like, I don't have any money to pay you, I'll take on your case. And it's just, what I mean? It's always that, right? Getting paid in coupons and I don't know, pre-printed T-shirts or something like that. It's always really weird. But that's a very tropish thing of characters, our protagonist barely surviving and getting by to just complete that cycle over and over and over again of yeah, I'll help you out. Gets pulled into something they really didn't want to get pulled into. Can't let it go. Solves that issue. Things go back to normal, air quotes, and then that cycle happens again and again. So having like one special ability, if you're using a level system, being very low level would be a thing that would happen in this kind of Daredevil inspired setting or world and whatnot. Also the idea of a dark noir, gothic Hell's Kitchen, Gotham City means that there's always some issue to solve. Sometimes that issue to solve can be political, such as politicians embezzling money that should be going to the city, and what happens when that money is removed. Things like trash removal, health and human services, crime rates going up, uh, drugs flooding the city, all the petty crimes turning into or flowing into more major crimes. Petty crimes like you always starting a game out with like some kind of petty crime the players can get their hands around and show how badass they are, like purse snatching, carjacking, drug selling, threats and intimidation of store owners and things like that. Maybe some arson thrown in there for good measure. Racketeering and gambling and things like that. Yeah, throw that in there. And then, and of course a bunch of thugs. You gotta have yourself some nameless thugs that you can just cannon fodder for players to like beat ass on, and just give them some cool, like, oh, this is guy with chain, this is guy with spiked baseball bat, this is someone with I don't know, brass knuckles or whatever, and then just let the players go to work on them. Something that, with Marvel making Daredevil a little bit more grounded and street level, you don't get a lot of the classic Batman villains and thugs where they're like, it's the Joker squad where they're all dressed in jackets with clown masks on and funny faces on the back. You don't get a lot of that in the Daredevil comics. Most of them are literal street level. Like, they drive regular cars, they wear regular clothing, and have regular objects. And every once in a while, someone will poke up, like Kingpin. Kingpin has vacillated from classic comic book, bone white wearing suit that's a big dude, sumo wrestler type dude that is so strong he can just like lift up motorcycles and throw them, all the way down to he's just a businessman that just happens to be tall and beefy, but he doesn't have any superpowers and no special ability to resist any kind of extraordinary strengths or speeds or anything. But every once in a while, is it like the upper levels of those things? Sure. And if you have a game where the players can move a little bit upper level to maximum human, this probably would be the maximum in a Hell's Kitchen Daredevil type of game. Other elements to throw into the game, especially with like a Gotham City Hell's Kitchen, would also be coming up with reasons why people don't leave. Now, of course, you have your typical, well, I grew up here, I have no reason to leave. But there's always these outside influences trying to come into the place, burning people out of their homes to get them to leave because they want to build a brand new shiny skyscraper. New York City has these grandfather laws, so that if someone who's lived in an apartment for a very long time, legally they can't raise the rent. So you get the classic story of trying to get those people to move out using a lot of crime and intimidation to get them to move out of a place so that the place could be rented out and more money can be extracted out of people who the new residents by getting the older residents out. Also, the idea that the players become the ambassadors of this place, meaning like players having to, or not, well, feeling a responsibility over feeding the homeless, making sure people are, aren't evicted from their homes, that they can travel safely to and from school, things like that. Yeah, listen, there's a lot of things we could have a whole nother channel of like, why do people in the States stay in the States when it's so bad, right? And a lot of that has to do with it, and this is just a generalization of any place, any person that lives anywhere. And there is community from survivors of the Crucible, I believe. So an example would be like, if you live in a place with a flood zone, you have a unspoken relationship to everybody else who lives in the same place that's a flood zone. You know what it's like to have help and help others, get their mold infested stuff out of their basements, and so their one automobile they use to get to and from work gets flooded and um, washed downstream and whatnot. And yes, it makes sense to leave that, but on the other hand, there is a community within the crucible, and people who are not related to each other, because you get this is a very military mindset where you have personalities of people who normally would never even associate with each other, but if you go through the same hardships, there is a relationship. So where people live, especially in the worst neighborhoods, there is a commonality of I survived like you survived. Yeah, you bring yourself with you wherever you want to be, so there's no escape this reality, not even in Germany. Yep. Reminds me, I finally got around to watch Civil War over the weekend. Oh, great. Yeah, we got to talk about that. Hey, we could. All right, I had something else planned. We'll bring up Civil War tomorrow, because I know I did like a bit of a review on the movie, but that is another piece of what's the term? Not exploitive. There are a number of words going through my head. Speculative. It is a speculative fiction movie, well done, and threw people the wrong way when they saw it. And I think it sparked something in people that is pretty ridiculous, I think. But it's a good movie. It's a good movie because, again, it tells a story. It's a very personalized movie, more personal than I think people than it was advertised. So great movie. So yeah, you got me. We'll do that tomorrow. We'll definitely do that tomorrow. But yeah, you take yourself wherever you go, and also there is people that survive a crucible, and I'm calling it crucible because I can't think of a better word for going through hardships with other people that also go through the same hardships, and having this common frame of reference that if you leave that hardship, it's almost like you're leaving them behind as well. And even if you have the ability to leave, and I'm not saying whether it's smart or not, I'm saying that this just happens to be, it's a thing that people do. We have relationships with people that survive these things, and that live through these things, and whether it's bad neighborhoods or this could be anything from the neighborhood you live in to your family structure to, like, for example, people who have, let's bring up some dark things because that's the only way to relate to this. People who have had severe alcoholism run through their family have a relationship with other people who've gone through the same thing. Sometimes that also borders on like physical abuses, and those individuals sometimes almost have an uncanny ability to sense that in other people. And again, if you just grew up very poor, a poor urban sometimes has a similar outlook with the same people that are poor suburban or rural, right? And they have this like connection, even though you look like, man, maybe you should get out of that place. And a lot of parents want their kids to get out of it, but too often it's like, if you leave, you're turning your back on us. And I think Hell's Kitchen, Gotham City is kind of like that, right? Like there's some people who have high hopes, like, I remember when this was better, or I have dreams of this place being better. I'm not leaving. Even though, what was it, the Penguin show? The girlfriend's like, yeah, I'm going to California. You want to follow me? It's like, nah, I'm going to make my life better here. And it didn't turn out too well. But yeah, I think it's the same thing, right? It's like growing up in this place. His dad died. Talk about Matt Murdock's character, right? He grew up in this place. He knew as a kid he was tangentially like protected by some of the supporting cast in his life, and so doesn't want to leave. Bruce Wayne the same way, as a similarized character, right? Like it's like Alfred and other people when he was Commissioner Gordon, knowing Bruce when he was younger and whatnot, and going like, I'm not leaving these people behind. And not only that, but it's sometimes we where we grow up, sometimes people, it's very difficult for those people to leave those things behind. You often see this where in people's clothing, their behavior, the language they use, their etiquette, it's like they can't drop it, and they only fit in where they were not born, but where they their upbringing is. Yeah, worse, there are always people who drag you back down into the mire. You know what? That's a very common. How many movies have we in television shows have we seen that? The one character that wants to leave and like, I'm going to get an education, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to have my family, keep them safe. And what happens? There's always a character that's like, you left us, you turn your back, you got to make a hard decision to come back with us. And then, of course, the person that's like telling them to make this hard decision always makes it worse with some kind of threat like, I'm gonna tell your family who you used to be, or I'm going to, cock's gun, blah blah blah, if you don't do this thing with us, then if you're not our friend, you're our enemy. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. Now, the Daredevil can pretty much beat ass anybody that tries to threaten him that way, but there are many supporting cast in the Matt Murdock character's background that dragged him back down into the trenches, if that's the case. Which is why, again, thematically, it is a character that's like, the classic idea of like a person reaching their hand down to pull somebody out of a pit is very much wrapped around the Daredevil character, right? Like he's reaching down into the abyss, into the fiendish depths, and then above him is the angelic light that is cast upon his back that he can't see himself, but he is like an agent of the of goodness and light reaching down for people. And of course, he has to do very bad things to get things done. With him beating ass and taking names and whatnot. A lot of that stuff. And as a matter of fact, very often in depictions of the beginnings of Daredevil, before he got like the red suit with the classic horns and whatnot, he used to wrap his hands up like a boxer does and just wear a black scarf like the television show, just wear a black half mask over his face to cover his identity, and just put on like sweats and a sweatshirt, and carries his cane with him and starts beating ass. That's another thing. Oh, dichotomies, right? Here's this blind man that uses a cane to use it to sweep his area in front of him, but then uses that same cane, often called a billy club, with a hook that he can sometimes straighten, and it's a multifunction MacGuffin, right? Like sometimes it's a long staff, sometimes it's like a nunchaku, sometimes it's split in half and whatnot. He carries it on his waist. It's difficult to see this behind me, but he's holding his two billy clubs, and then on his hip he's got the like sheath to put them in, and he's using this very innocuous device, basically a stick, to beat ass. And then of course at the end of a fight puts it together and walks away like he's just a regular old blind man, right? Although it's pretty funny because so many of the supporting cast know he's blind, and yet he doesn't hide it very well. He doesn't hide his senses very well, because despite the fact of like sometimes pretending like he can't see, like in court and stuff, he trips over things and stuff. Most of the people in most of his supporting cast are just like, yeah, dude, whatever. We know that you know how to, I don't know, read a newspaper with your fingertips and can smell, what kind of cologne people are wearing and all that kind of stuff. Shai says half masks are BS. Yeah, they'll identify you by your lips like Peter Weller and RoboCop. Yep. Yeah, I know. The whole, like, you'd have to go full face mask, and even then, like, people, we are very attuned to people's gait, the way they walk and move, And of course, even voice wise, you'd be able to figure this out pretty quickly. And also, kind of funny how Matt Murdock, the lawyer, has the exact same facial bruises as this Daredevil person, whatever. But of course, Daredevil's supposed to be fighting in the dark, and most of the criminals would never go to the public to figure out who this guy is. So photographs and things like that would be very hard to get. I get it though. But the half mask is cool though, right? Like it's really cool to have like the half mask bandana and whatnot. Also the Daredevil does the classic like no look fighting style and such, like where he's not looking at the target, but someone tries to sneak up behind him and thinks that they've got him by surprise, but then he does like a back kick, or he bounces his billy club off a wall and takes the person out as it bounces back to his hand, acting like it's no big deal. Yeah, he does a lot of the no look catches, passes, flips, and things like that as well. Really cool. I would also say that in terms of adding more to like a theme that we could use to play on is again, this very homebound character that instead of establishing characters as being fully like having every capability attached to them, instead their larger supporting cast, their NPCs, are the place that they go to fulfill certain needs. So for example, maybe Daredevil doesn't have forged papers, or he isn't a hacker, or he doesn't have a lot of political connections, but he has supporting cast he can go to that enable him to gain certain, say, bonuses to his skill checks and whatnot. One very common thing is there's a bar where most of the criminals hang out, and it's a Turk and Grotto. Turk and Grotto were always these two thugs on the street who aren't very effective thugs very much, but he always goes to them and like beats their ass to get information from them because they always have their ear to the ground. And that seems to be that was a very common trope in maybe still to this day in various iterations of Daredevil, where he goes to Turk and or Grotto to get some kind of information. Like one of them is selling, I don't know, bootleg DVDs out of the trunk of his car, and Daredevil would be like, no one uses a DVD player anymore. And he's like, oh, you don't know, they're gonna come back. Grotto might say that, or Turk might like, I don't know, try to break into cars or something like that. There's always something dumb. Yeah. Drew says people can disguise themselves just with a wig. Just because you have plenty of time to look at a comic panel or know the actor in a show doesn't mean you would be able to, in reality, spot them in real life. Yeah, I agree with that too. Like parasocial relationships, right? We think we know these famous people, including even politicians and stuff, but in real life, we'd probably do like a double take. I bet a lot of that has to deal with the lighting and the makeup and the clothing, and even their voices can be modified quite a bit. So we may not even recognize their tone of voice. Although, side note, Lawrence Fishburne doing the deep voice against Neil deGrasse Tyson in a recent podcast vlog or whatever like that was pretty funny. Both of them, they were having some fun with it. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson was having a little bit too much fun with it. But yeah, even and Lawrence Fishburne were going through how deep could I make my voice? Here's Star Talk. They were just having fun. No, I'm Morpheus. No, I'm Morpheus. It was pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, that can be a thing. I think one of the coolest wig mask combinations was one of the original Batgirl costumes, where she wore like a brunette wig underneath her costume, but that wasn't her hair. Like she put the wig on and then wore the costume, so she saw the hair poking out the back, and then start beating ass. And then in her regular life, she had like a shorter haircut. So the Barbara Gordon Batgirl character or something. Yeah, I thought that was cool. Also, there's a Watchmen character, a black guy, that would put white makeup around his eyes to make people think that he was Caucasian, but he was not. He was African American in the comic book series, and they did a live action version of that in the HBO series, The Watchmen, too. So yeah, kind of cool. Oh, well, it was hinted at in the graphic novel, and then they actually showed it in the televised version. I was like, that's cool. Hiding your identity that way, kind of cool. But also coming up with reasons why players have connections. Again, going back to the connections and bonds and what are some names? Anchors, bonds, ties, attachments, or whatever you can call them. Right? Go type yourself a thesaurus and try to find those words, and then give players many of those bonds, like 3 to 5. I wouldn't go past 5. I think 3 is I like triangles. So 3 is probably a good sweet number to give players things like that, so that they can it gives them a reason for why they still remain here, and also gives something for the game master to threaten if they have, they're stuck for a storyline. I believe in, and I'm going to mix up which game this is. One are called fronts, in another game they're called icons. Powered by the Apocalypse, Dungeon World, and some other game. Anyway, you guys know. Please, I apologize for misrepresenting which game it belongs to, but they're very similar. So icons and fronts are a meta system for in-world reasoning to attach players to the stories you're telling. So icons are icons that the players get to choose when world building, that are the movers and shakers of the world. They are the neutral flowing towards evil side of things that move things in the world. Kingpin would be an example in as an icon, but you could have other NPCs that are in there, and they don't necessarily need to be the big evil, big bad. But 13th Age, that's the other one. Fronts is Dungeon World, icons is 13th Age. Thank you there, Drew. I was like, there's another role-playing game I'm missing. So icons are, fantasy-wise, the icons were something like the Elven Queen and the Dwarven King and things like that. Very generalized, but they would come up often enough, and players could attach themselves to those icons because maybe they used to be part of those factions or attached to them. Maybe they want to become part of those things. Maybe they are rivals. And so having a region where the players get to choose these adversaries, and their machinations come up often in the cyclical fashion, would be very common. And then fronts are closer to less individuals, closer to at things that are transpiring in the background. And so a front could be drops are moving into Hell's Kitchen. I'm mixing comic book things here. Drops were eye drop drugs that people had in the Penguin televised series. Of course, DC Comics, but maybe a new drug is coming into town, and that is a front. But another front could be corrupt developers are trying to buy up as much land in Hell's Kitchen. And then a third front with our third player could be something like, maybe, the homeless population is being victimized by a low-level criminal element that is taking advantage of them. And so those fronts could come up at periods of time. The players know what's happening in the background. The game master could either randomly choose, or you roll dice or something like that. And then this front comes up and the players go, oh yeah, those damn developers are coming in. Okay. And then it's an easy fallback when the game master's like, I don't have a storytelling, but maybe I'll use those criminals that are going after homeless. Maybe the criminals are looking for evidence because one or some homeless person saw them commit some kind of crime, or stole some kind of document, or knows the location of some bigger plot that's going on, and so you use that as a means, a hook to spark some kind of storyline, and the players are like, oh, these criminals again hurting the homeless, and then maybe they find one of the homeless people that's like, I saw the warehouse where they were doing this thing and it was a big giant machine, or whatever, or uh, I don't know, there were they're experimenting on the homeless people with this new type of drug, or mutagenic scientific development thing, or whatever, right? And they need to do a human testing, but of course they're going to do it on innocent people who don't want to be tested on, and then they start mutating in the streets or whatever, Raven's Hammer, hey, what's up? I don't think I've seen your name before. I will need to look into this. I am wanting to bring a bit more depth to character background development in a cyberpunk game I'm working on. Oh, about the icons and fronts and things like that. Yeah, those are the icons from 13th Age and fronts to Dungeon World is very much that kind of thing where you ask the players. So icons are a generalized person or faction, and fronts are motivations, but they basically occupy the same space. Oh, first time here. Oh, great, cool. And basically you get your players to pick what they are, and then as a game master, when you're stuck for ideas or you want to incorporate their background into the story, you use that as the motivator. So instead of saying, like in Cyberpunk, right, because I love Cyberpunk, I'm an old school Cyberpunk player, right? I remember back when it was called Cyberpunk 2017. I still got my 2020 book in the back. Anyway, long story short, Cyberpunk character used to be part of, I'm going to bring it up, Black Sabers. I talk about the Black Sabers a lot, right, on the channel. So it's just a random name come up with, like a mercenary group, right? So the players, yeah, there you go, yeah, great game. But anyway, so let's say the player used to belong to the Black Sabers, a mercenary group, and that group can be an icon, the Black Sabers, or a front would be the Black Saber mercenary group is employed by, I don't know, of course, the insidious corporations, and they have a specific tactic that they use that leaves evidence wherever they go, like a calling card, whatever. So the player, the main plot doesn't involve these Black Sabers, but what you could use it in to incorporate the player's background and the story is that it just so happens that Arasaka, or I don't know, some other corporation or whatever is using a mercenary group. Why not make that mercenary group members of the Black Sabers? And now they have this yeah, true. I know I'm dumb when I do that, but that ties it back together. It's the equivalent of fantasy adventurers going, fighting orcs on the side of the road, like bandits or something, and that bandit says something like, hey, before we run off, hightail it out of here, you damn adventurers, I'm going to take you out like I took out your uncle. And it's like, how is there a connection between the two? That's all it is. Homeless mutant superhero special commando force. Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. You guys are funny. So anyways, thanks for stopping by there, Raven's Hammer. We tend to go live 6 a.m.-ish, Monday through Friday-ish. One man group over here, but it's pretty much like us. It's the equivalent of us getting around the table before or after a game and just talking to shit. So that's what we do. And I come up with a theme, and so I love world building. And I've got you can't see past Daredevil back here, but I have a number of standees, and I was going to use them as they've been there for a while, and I put them up in the background just to have some visual differentiation. But I was like, huh, well, why not use them as a story element? So that's all. That's what it is. Tomorrow we're going to do the movie Civil War, and we'll vacillate between movies, television, comic books, like my standees and things like that, and just taking thematic elements from them and world building out from them. And again, we could talk about cyberpunk all the time. Like it's a great game, and I love the I'm a person of a certain age that remembers that 80s aesthetic, cyberpunk aesthetic, which is kind of funny because a bit of our society has actually grown past the cyberpunk aesthetic with like, we always thought there would be like constant rain with neon signs and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep. But yeah, what was it like? If you want to do cyberpunk really well, you have to have brand names. It either had rained, is raining, or will rain. You have to have neon lights reflecting off of those nasty, puddles of water. The movie. Oh, what is the? Matt Damon. What is the movie that he was in? And I can't remember it now. And it's not showing up there. Oh, it's very cyberpunk visually. Very cyberpunk. What was the name of that movie? Not The Last Duel. Stillwater. No, before that. What was that sci-fi movie called? I can't remember it. And it's bothering me now. Elysium. Damn it. Elysium. Woof. You may not agree of how good the movie Elysium is, but if you want to talk cyberpunk, the beginnings of that movie very much cyberpunk, right? Yeah. Oh man. You have to have a scab drink in that water as well. Yeah. Oh, pretty bad, man. Yeah. Oh, by the way, of course, as you can tell with the chat and stuff like that, we go live on YouTube. I mean, it's simulcast, YouTube and Twitch. So you can join either one of those areas and join in and spread the word or whatever. But anyway, good to have you here. Thank you very much for stopping by. And we've gone on, as always, going on just a little bit too long. Real life calls, got to head off to work. But thank you very much for letting me just, have a fun talking about things and trying to, I love using the most simplistic or common or even uncommon elements and use that as feeding fuel to get that muscle or mental muscle working, and I love it. Oh, altered carbon. I am a altered carbon, eclipse phase, post-human, transhumanist fan. Yeah. We're big sci-fi fans on this side of the side of the interwebs for tabletop role-playing games. Science fiction is kind of like the stepchild of like tabletop role-playing games. I don't know why that is. And then like cyberpunk and transhumanism is kind of like a niche of a niche as well. I had totally forgotten that I ever watched that film. You can take that as testament how good I think it was. Ouch. Burn. Yeah, it was. Maybe the execution wasn't good. The visual effects, particularly chef's kiss. Just like, what is it? The Creator is released on Amazon Prime most recently, and that has visual effects that are brilliant as well. Although the plot is just kind of like, But yeah, an Alex Garland flick. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. Going to let you guys go. Have a great one. Stop by tomorrow, 6 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time. Not sure where you're from there, Raven, and everybody else. But yeah, 6-ish, whatever. A minute or two past, probably. Yeah, totally progressive. Getting past this whole human thing. Hey, can't wait. Can't wait till we have what would it be? Practical immortality or whatnot? Brain downloading. Yay! Anyway, guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Peace and tranquility. Bye.